This is kind of my process of trying to understand. It's very interesting. Truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. This created this very rare, problematic scenario, which is the thing we can talk about later. It's happening. The hardest thing for years was just getting people to say, "Wow, this is real," right?
We're so glad to have you, Jan Jekielek,
That's right.
here with us, senior editor at Epoch Times, one of our favorite sources. And before we get into something that you're doing that's interestingly amazing, almost incredible to hear, and it's not fiction, it's nonfiction. And that's the interesting thing about it. Before we get to that, tell us a little bit, Jan, how it is that you ended up here at this spot today as senior editor of Epoch Times.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. You have an amazing operation at Q Productions. I had a weird and unusual path to getting into journalism. I was actually an evolutionary biologist by training back in the day. And I actually studied lemurs, of all things, and I was looking at alternate models of evolution. Got very sick. It basically killed my career. I had something called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which a lot of people have never heard of. It's an autoimmune disease. And I healed myself out of that through using a kind of Chinese meditation. What I didn't know about this Chinese meditation was that the Chinese government was trying to destroy it. I just was trying alternative therapies on a lark. Maybe something will help me, right? And yeah, so I tried this. I learned from a video, and basically I healed myself in a matter of a couple of months. My neurologist was telling me, "You're in full remission, congratulations, keep doing what you're doing." And I learned I'm practicing this meditation that the Chinese Communist Party hates and wants to destroy. And did a little bit of my own research and realized, my goodness, these people, it's called Falun Gong. These people that do Falun Gong, they're unusually resilient to torture. This is kind of my process of trying to understand. It's very interesting. Truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. These are things people are living. Has a lot of individual agency. It's actually, I think that's part of the reason why the regime decided to destroy it, because it didn't fit into their kind of obscenely hierarchical system where the Communist Party is supreme, right? And so, I found this horrible human rights travesty happening. People being tortured to death because they weren't allowing themselves to be re-educated, right? Because they're standing up for their faith. And along the way, some very evil person figured out that they could actually monetize this. By the way, we're talking about 70 to 100 million people that had been made illegal in China, right? So mass population, mass incarceration, maybe even several million in the system, in the various labor camps and everything. And this created this very rare, problematic scenario, which is the thing we can talk about later, where basically a murder for organs industry was developed, right? And now, how did I get into it myself? Well, Epoch was the only media back in the day that wanted to cover China honestly, as far as I could tell, right? Have you ever heard of the Kissinger Doctrine?
Yes.
So, this is the glib summary for those that haven't.
Yes.
If you pump enough cash into China, it'll liberalize and become a democracy. That was the Kissinger Doctrine.
Correct.
Okay?
That was the playbook at the time.
That was the playbook. And so I already knew, because they were literally killing people for refusing to give up their faith, that these guys are not liberalizing. That's not a sign of a liberalizing regime, right? Because some can, right? And it turned out they were very determined to stay totalitarian and not allow that development of civil society. It's needed to shift out of an authoritarian regime into some sort of thing more like a democracy or a free society. So at the time, everybody wanted to believe that. Media wanted to believe it. Certainly the industry wanted to believe it. Yeah. Of course there was, they were helped by good money.
Everyone was seeing green, yes.
Everyone was seeing green. But I knew it was false. And so we, in a way, it was kind of a marriage made in heaven because I was working on this underground railroad, bringing Chinese out through the Golden Triangle from China into Thailand. I wanted to tell the stories of some of these amazing people who were doing this, and no one wanted it, except Epoch. Epoch loved it. Epoch was actually founded by Chinese Americans to tell the reality of China back in the day, right? So it was very natural, and it was very small at the beginning, and I've just been a part of it ever since, 20 years.
You started as a scientist, basically.
Correct.
And through that, your personal journey caused you to seek a survivalship, right? And what a great path that you couldn't script this. And you find yourself now on this end of that. And you have a story that is called Kill to Order. Just the title is chilling, sobering. And tell us about that, and we'll talk to our audience how to get a hold of this, but tell us what's within the covers, what do you want to reveal or share within that book?
It's a very difficult issue, but I'll sketch out the thumbnail for you, okay? It's really only a state actor it's kind of like a very extreme version of black market organ trade, okay? That can only be done by a state actor, okay? In communist China, when they decided to persecute the Falun Gong, they incarcerated some millions of people. Let's say 1 million, okay? They dehumanized them. In order to justify persecuting them, they had to tell the world, their people, hey, these people are bad, they're evil, whatever. This is kind of what happened in the 1930s to the Jewish people, okay? Same idea.
You dehumanize them, you vilify them, right?
Correct, exactly. And because now the society kind of looks down on them, and it allows you to get rid of them if that's your purpose, right?
Yes.
Well, now as an American or a Canadian, I can find an ad in my newspaper that says, hey, I can get a new heart in 2 weeks. And let's say I'm desperate because I've been waiting for a heart, I have a rare blood condition, and that heart's not coming, right? But here, 2 weeks scheduled, okay? How is that even possible? Well, they blood typed and tissue typed and gotten the vitals of all these people in the system ahead of time. And now they can just make a match upon the order being made, and they can kill to order. Right? And that's the really short sketch of how that system works.
So within the pages that amplifies this chilling reality, for some of us are Canadians or Americans immune to anything outside of our blessed North America existence. How prevalent is this? How is this happen 10 times a year? What?
Unfortunately, I wish I didn't have to say this, but the 2020 China Tribunal, which assessed the entirety of the evidence, run by a man named Slobodan Milosevic, who had prosecuted, it was run by a man named Sir Jeffrey Nice, who had prosecuted Slobodan Milosevic back in the day. Okay, they estimate it's 60 to 90,000 transplants a year since about 2000. So we're talking it's hard. It's not one transplant per person; could be many, but maybe 1 million people. I mean, it's a lot. It's terrible. It's a crime against humanity.
So with this, making this a conscious thing and an awareness, what can we do as a culture society to address this other than realizing it exists?
Well, so a few different things. It's an unusual time, okay? Because for a whole lot of reasons, people for some reason seem to be ready finally to accept that it's happening. The hardest thing for years was just getting people to say, wow, this is real, right? There's 7 states that have passed legislation, basically that say insurance and Medicare can't pay for China transplants. That's good. That's amazing, right? There's 43 states to go, okay? At the federal level, there's 3 pieces of legislation in Congress. 2 have passed the House, they're in the Senate now. Falun Gong Protection Act, Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act. Both of these are very good pieces of legislation that'll stop some of the evildoers from actually acting through sanctions and other measures. Very good stuff, right? But I also think just the raising awareness of the information is a critical part, because it's so, for some people it's just very hard to accept it, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes if there's a book, I would encourage people to buy and share the book. You can pre-order it now. It'll be out in March, and maybe it'll help some of these other, let's say, legislations, or
Yes.
for example, HHS has even on X talked about this issue and said and condemned it, and so they can actually stop, for example, funding our the research collaborations with transplants in China, training surgeons in China, which we have done. I mean, there's all sorts of not sending the materials for doing the transplantation to China. There's a whole range of things that we can do, and we can do them quick, and it's kind of a no-brainer for me.
So you wrote this not to sell a book. You wrote this out of necessity and, in a sense, compassion to raise awareness. Is it your goal or objective to get this out there enough where awareness is raised so that the right ears and people in the right hallways that can bring it to their consciousness to make it a thing that we as a society don't want to put up with this?
100%. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. In fact, it wasn't really my desire to be writing a book at a very busy time in my life, but I told the publisher there is one topic that I would do because it's so important, and he agreed. So this is like, I mean, see, here's the problem, okay? We kind of think of it as something far away, right? But what happens with these things, these extreme human rights violations, in 2000, they started on the Falun Gong. They dehumanized and incarcerated 1 million people. Well, in 2014, because no one did anything, they started on a new group, the Uyghurs. Some people might have heard about the persecution of the Uyghurs in the northwest of China, in Xinjiang province. Well, similar situation. They dehumanized a group, they incarcerated another 1 million, and they added them to the stockpile of forced organ harvesting victims, so to speak, right? And in America, on the other hand, because of these deep collaborations that we have in America, and not only, but in part, we've had to decertify multiple systems because we're violating the dead donor rule now, right? Because we're dealing with basically a country where violating the dead donor rule is the way transplantation is done by and large, right? So it's not something that stays over there.
Right.
It very much does affect us.
I think so. I suppose if it impacts one human anywhere, it impacts us all. Right. Alexander Solzhenitsyn had an amazing experience, and in his book, I believe it said, if one person tells the truth, it can change the world.
Yeah.
It's one human, and it is about humanity and human rights, and not dehumanizing. It's the opposite of that. Jan, please do me a favor. Tell our audience how they can access your book soon to come. That's not available yet. I wish it were. I can't wait to get that, and so that our audience can have access and know that we're all part of the humanity. We're part of the solution, or we're part of the problem. We don't get to sit on the sidelines. Jan, please tell us how we can get your book, Killed to Order.
Absolutely. Well, it's available on Amazon, Killed to Order.
Killed, I'm sorry, yes.
My last name, Jan Jekielek.
Spell that first.
JanJekielek. That's also my X handle, at Jan Jekielek.
Jan Jekielek.
And absolutely. I mean, I really think we're in an unusual time where we can actually make a dent at this at the very least.
You know, I'm so grateful in this conversation because what you're doing and using the power of media. We love Epoch Times and what they're doing because it's human driven. It's not sensationalism. You're making a difference in humanity. You're not just informing, and we love what you're doing. I would love to. We're going to keep it open with your team. We have a longer format visit.
Great.
Perhaps when your book comes out. So
I would love that. That would be an honor.
We can have it and want to make it available to our audience and at large. People need to know this. This isn't an option of reading a book over the holidays. This is a need to read. Killed to Order. Thank you for taking and risking what you've done. We'll talk more about that
I
next
look forward
time,
to that.
because this doesn't come on a free ride. There are things that you're putting out there, and you're ruffling a lot of feathers, to say the least, and we're aware of that. So we appreciate you, appreciate your courage and your honesty. And Jan, thank you for taking time with us today. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.